What's up everybody, Nate here. So in today's video, we are discussing 10 reasons why you'll fail at ultralight backpacking, but how to fix it. A lot of people think that ultralight backpacking just simply comes down to weight, which is partially true, but not fully accurate. But what is true is how you hike, what you prioritize, and what you put value into when you go hiking and backpacking. So let's not waste any more time. We'll get right into it, and we'll start with reason number one, which is you approach it with the wrong expectations. So going ultralight isn't just simply a gear swap. You're not just swapping out gear for more light gear. It really comes down to a totally different mindset to go ultralight backpacking. And that mindset revolves around minimalism and simplicity. So as you know, you have to get your kit 10 pounds or less. And the best way to do that is not to go out and buy a bunch of ultralight gear that weighs very little, because often if you are actually carrying everything a traditional backpacker would carry, but it's the ultralight version of those items, you're probably still gonna be over 10 pounds. Going ultralight means you're paring down your kit and you're just simply bringing less. So if you go in with the mindset of a traditional backpacker, you might possibly fail at being an ultralight backpacker because it just isn't very congruent with how an ultralight hiker would think or how they would actually hit the trail. Ultralight backpacking also revolves around being more efficient on trail, being efficient with the items that you do carry, having items that are multifunctional. So again, if you're used to kind of a traditional setup and you're just jumping right into ultralight, you might find that if you're just simply replacing gear, it might not really work out for you in the best way. So how do you fix this? Well, again, going ultralight is really just a mindset change. You have to remember that simplicity reigns supreme in ultralight backpacking, that going minimal is the most efficient way of going ultralight backpacking. You know, it's kind of a challenge-based sort of approach as well, guys, because you're challenging yourself to reduce your kit. And honestly, it might even be a challenge on trail, especially initially, because you're relying more on skills than your actual gear to get by as an ultralight backpacker. So reason number two is you think going ultralight will just magically make your hike easier. And don't get me wrong, going ultralight is amazing. You have less stuff on your back, so you can hike those miles faster, generally, and stronger and better, and be a little more efficient on trail, but it doesn't actually just make your hike automatically easier. And if it makes you feel better, this is something I still fall for quite often, where I'm planning a trip and I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm going ultralight, I can do way more miles and I can do way more elevation gain or whatever. And you know, guys, we're still hiking and backpacking. It's still a struggle. It's still a challenge, which hiking and backpacking is sort of meant to be a challenge, right? And even if you did some of these trips without anything on your back, it would still be hard.
This is the longest 0.3 miles I've ever experienced. Jeez, I'm crow.
So if you're going ultralight with the sole thought of it's just going to make my hike so easy, I'm here to say that you will probably be in for a little bit of a surprise. So the fix for this is just managing your expectations. And this is something I'm still working on because I love big trips. I love doing big miles. It's just something in my blood. It's something I've been doing years before I ever started this YouTube channel. So I have to constantly just remind myself that, hey, even though I have an ultralight kit, doesn't automatically mean I'm Superman, right? Doesn't mean that I can do double the miles I would normally do. If you keep that in mind, you will be successful at being an ultralight backpacker. But again, if those expectations aren't really set, you might have a miserable time. You might fail at it. Reason number three is you care more about image than the actual experience of being an ultralight backpacker. You know, you're kind of doing it for the wrong reasons. You're going because you want to brag about it. You want to brag about your base weight. That is probably one of the worst reasons that we're tackling on the list today. Your ego will do nothing but bring you down if you decide to rely on it 100% for being an ultralight backpacker. Again, if you're just doing it for prestige, guys, that is just so off-putting, and not only off-putting for others around you, it's going to be off-putting for you. You will fail at ultralight backpacking. Your heart is not in the game. When your heart's not in the game, 9 times out of 10, you end up failing. So don't do it for prestige. Don't do it to look good to others. This isn't about others. This is about you. It's about you tapping into who you are as a person, who you are as a backpacker. Reason number four is you let social media influence you way too much. I am going to be 100% real here, guys. When I go backpacking, I very rarely see other ultralight backpackers, at least in my area. But social media presents it as if like it is the end all, the only way to go backpacking. And I'm guilty of that as well, right? Like almost all of my videos, especially these last few months, have revolved strictly around ultralight backpacking. So if you get kind of sucked into that mindset of well, I have to go ultralight. It's what 𝐒𝐈𝐍𝐊 is talking about. It's what Jupiter Hikes is talking about. Just know that that is such a subcategory of backpacking. And almost everybody I encounter are traditional backpackers, or actually heavyweight backpackers. I'd say the mix is probably pretty even between the two. Now, an astute observer of my channel put a comment on one of my videos, and I loved this comment. He said, I love watching 𝐒𝐈𝐍𝐊, it's great, but I also love watching other more traditional backpacking channels because it gives me a sense of where I fall as a backpacker. And I cannot encourage you guys enough to not just watch my videos, is to watch so many other videos, so many other influencers or whatever. I'm not an influencer, I'm just saying. And kind of draw your own conclusions about what you think would be right for you as a backpacker. But don't just strictly think because you see us, especially me or others, whatever, talking about ultralight that you have to do it. Trust me, if you're just doing it because you think everyone else is, that's a horrible reason to go ultralight backpacking and you'll probably fail. Reason number 5 is you focus on weight reduction more than the actual performance of the gear. So if it's your goal to cut weight at all costs, sacrificing all of your comfort, all of the joys that you have from backpacking just because you want to get your base weight to 10 pounds or less, that's a horrible reason to go ultralight backpacking. But if you kind of play your cards right and you build a kit that's in tune to who you are as a person and what you enjoy as a backpacker, you're going to be better off than just trying to cut as much weight as possible and using your jacket as a pillow if you really like comfort when you're sleeping at night, or carrying a bivvy because it's so much lighter than, well, actually not really nowadays, but you're carrying a crappy shelter because it's light and it serves the goal of getting your base weight down more than it does to serve the needs that you have as an actual backpacker. It's going to suck for you. Quite simply, it's going to suck and you're probably going to hate ultralight backpacking and you'll try it a few times and you won't go near it again. A lighter pack does not automatically equal a better experience. If you're just focusing on weight reduction alone, you will have a miserable experience. You won't carry the stuff that you want to carry. Going UL is a balance of everything, right? And I have videos that show me carrying traditional gear with ultralight gear. And I think especially if you're new to getting into ultralight backpacking, that's a good way to go. You can combine comfort items with ultralight items and still get your base weight around 10 pounds. And even, guys, let's just be honest here. Even if your base weight's 11 pounds or 12 pounds, but it used to be 18 pounds or 24 pounds or whatever, I am all for that. I don't want to sit here and just preach to you and be like, it has to be 10 pounds or less. Ultimately, what my goal is to get you guys into being an ultralight backpacker. But even if I'm just causing you to think critically about what you're bringing and you're able to reduce your base weight by 5, 6, 10 pounds, whatever, I consider that a 100% straight win. Reason number 6 is you prioritize comfort at camp over comfort while hiking. So oftentimes going ultralight means you're making sacrifices. And a lot of those sacrifices come in the form of what you are actually doing when you're not hiking, when you're at camp. So a lot of ultralight backpackers are really into hiking and they're really into hiking long miles. And the camp experience is really just a sleeping experience for them, right? It's a chance to eat, to sleep, to wake up and hike more miles. So they often base their hikes around doing that, being as comfortable as possible on trail while they're moving their legs, as opposed to, and there's nothing wrong with this, people who want to be more comfortable at camp, who plan on spending more time at camp. So if you're a person who likes to set up camp early, lounge around, bring a chair, sit in a chair, build a big fire, maybe you're a really social person, you like interacting with others and being, at your final destination is what you really enjoy most about backpacking. Well, going ultralight, it might be a struggle for you. You might fail at it. Now, this isn't to say that going UL doesn't mean you're going to be uncomfortable at camp. It's just that the emphasis is the trail. The emphasis is being on trail, covering miles, being as comfortable as you can covering those miles. That's why we're trying to get our kits so low, as opposed to getting into camp and spending several hours there. For me personally, camping, the part of sleeping and eating, it's not an experience I typically super enjoy. It's not that I don't enjoy it. It's just a means to get to the next day. And that's why you often see me carrying a bivvy sometimes, because for me, it's not about being as comfortable as possible. It's just being as light as possible on trail and just being more efficient when I get to camp, because with that bivvy, I can just simply unroll it. My shelter's ready to go. So the camping experience for me, the sleeping and eating part and all that stuff, it's really just the kind of last thing that's on my mind about the trip. So is there a good fix for this if you enjoy camp experience more than hiking? potentially. I mean, you could always kind of switch things around a little bit, and maybe you will enjoy doing more miles when your pack is lighter. I don't really know. If you really like the camp experience, then that's totally cool, man. Do it. But just know, if you really enjoy that aspect of backpacking, going ultralight maybe isn't going to be a complete fail, but it will be a bigger challenge for you. Reason number 7 why you might fail is because you're just simply ignoring your own preferences. My preference for backpacking is that it's challenge-based, that it's not really an enjoyable experience from the typical mindset of, wow, look at all the trees and look at all the birds and let me smell the flowers and let me really, soak in this view for a half an hour. That's just not me. A lot of people don't want to sleep under a tarp. They want to have bug netting, for example. There's just so many preferences that go into hiking and backpacking. And if you're neglecting the majority of your preferences and you're trying to go ultralight, well, there may be a big learning curve for you, or you just won't enjoy it and you'll just kind of fail at the whole process and the whole experience. So the fix for this is just know thyself, right? Know who you are. Even in your everyday life, what you enjoy in your everyday life often translates into who you are as a backpacker. Don't ignore who you are truly as a person. If you do that and you're trying to go ultralight and you're not kind of crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's, and if you're new to it especially, you just might have a miserable experience. You might fail at it. Reason number 8 you might fail at ultralight backpacking is because you're ignoring trail conditions and terrain and just all the details that go into planning a hike. So regardless if you're an ultralight backpacker or not, I strongly suggest that you do your trail research and you know what you're getting into. You understand elevation profiles and where your water sources are. But going UL means you're kind of paring down your kit for the specific trip that you're going on. And we've talked about that multiple times so far. A UL kit is not a catch-all for every single hike and trail that you're doing. And in fact, most ultralight kits you can't really use outside of 2-3 seasons, right? So if you're not adjusting your gear to the conditions or the environment that you're going to be in, you will have a miserable time. You will fail at ultralight backpacking, especially if you're really just starting to get into it. Reason number 9 is you refuse to let go of what if gear. So what is what if gear? Well, it's extra pairs of socks, 2, 3, 4 pairs of socks. It's bringing a bunch of extra layers just in case if it gets cold, even if the weather says that it's not going to. The thing about ultralight backpacking is there's very little room for redundancy. And I'm not saying don't bring any sort of redundant objects because, every once in a while it's good to have 2 lighters instead of 1, right? Like if you have a stove and it relies on a lighter to light it and you lose one, what are you going to do then, especially if you're going solo? But in general, going ultralight means that you're paring down these kits and you're not really bringing backups for the vast majority of what you're carrying. Now you need to take this with a grain of salt, because if you're going out and you're 30-40 miles from civilization, and like here in the White Mountains, the weather can be very fickle, and you can look at a weather forecast and be like sunny and 80 all day, and then within the snap of a finger, the weather changes. It's very unpredictable.
The sun or the rain, whatever, however you want to look at it, just keeps coming and going, coming and going. Sunshine now.
I might end up bringing an extra layer or 2 because I know that if the weather does change, I would be in a super dangerous, potentially dangerous situation. If you are bringing anything that's redundant, just make sure it's absolutely mission critical. And just remember that ultralight backpacking is more or less about what you're leaving at home. And our next reason is that you're cutting gear too fast. You're dropping your base weight too fast. So for example, when I started going ultralight backpacking, when I started to put together my very first kit, all I cared about was getting my weight down as much as possible. So I replaced my quilt, I replaced my sleeping mat, I replaced my shelter, I replaced my pillow, I replaced my rain jacket. I replaced so much all at once. I basically went from a 20-pound base weight to like an 8-pound base weight, like overnight. I just eliminated so much, and I used so much gear that was basically untested. And I went on a trip with that gear, and thank the Lord that I actually had to call that trip off. Because if I had actually had to spend a night with the gear that I brought, it would have been borderline dangerous, at the very least super uncomfortable for me. And when you're new to ultralight backpacking, like that's what you want to do. You get hyper focused on just dropping as much weight as possible, which I get. I mean, that's the whole point of going ultralight, right? But don't do it too fast. It's better to just gradually get down to an ultralight status. If you're a heavy backpacker, get into lightweight and then get into ultralight. Don't make the leap from being just like a traditional backpacker to being a super ultralight backpacker. Generally, that's a bad outcome for you. You'll have a bad time, and ultimately you'll stop trying to go ultralight because you're like, it's just not for me. This is Nate Hikes. Thank you for watching. Like this video. I'd really appreciate that. See you guys next time.